Let's talk about Uncle Juan. Um, as I previously stated and alluded to, I mentioned him several times before, but I'm actually doing a podcast, creating a movie, and doing this video biography. Um, so I'm not sure as to, I'm kind of, with everything that's been going on recently, I'm kind of confused as to where I'm saying the stories and where I'm not. So please bear with me. But when it comes to my head, I'm going to tell you about it. And yesterday I elaborated on working in a McDonald's when I was a teenager. And I worked in McDonald's as a teenager because my mother refused to pay for anything as far as my senior dues went in high school. And if it wasn't for me working in McDonald's, I would have never gotten to go to the senior trip or my senior prom or even participate in any of the senior activities. So I was very grateful to actually do that. My mother actually started charging me rent as a teenager as well because I had a job. And no, I didn't pay her rent. For everything that she's done to me, I refuse to pay her any kind of compensation. Moreover, this is where I grew up, this I shouldn't have to be paying rent when no one else is paying rent, and she never got a dime from me, but I used that money to not only learn how to work in the workforce and in the fast food industry, but it made me develop the skills that I needed to pursue other jobs and to become social and engage with people. So, before I get into McDonald's, I want to get into Burger King because I was at Burger King before I went to McDonald's, and I was about maybe 15, 16, and I was working at McDonald's, and I learned how to make the food and prep the food much faster than anyone else in Burger King. And at the time, the hourly rate was $4.25. And can you imagine that? $4.25. But I did, and when managers saw that I was actually increasing productivity and getting meals out within 90 seconds, you know, they promoted me to team leader, and I became a team leader. And the Burger King was in this town called Five Towns. It's on the Nassau-Queens border, and on the other side of the Queens border is Far Rockaway. So it was between Far Rockaway and Nassau County. And on the turnpike, which is next to JFK Airport, you have all these stores like mechanic shops and other restaurants. I remember there being a KFC, a Wendy's, a movie theater, flea markets, a Gap. There were all these stores where you can actually shop and on the turnpike. And the Burger King was next to a hotel and a gas station. And in between that was the Burger King. And I remember having to ride these things called vans, and you would pay $1 as opposed to paying $1.75 for the train. So you would just pay $1 and get on the van, and it would go so fast. Most of them would have accidents, but they were legalized to drive. Well, some of them weren't, but others were, as far as the Liberty Cab, license. And so I remember getting in a van and almost every day after school and going to work, because anytime that I could, I wanted to avoid being at home. And I went to work, and on this one particular night, there was only 3 of us in the store. there was only three of us in the store, and it was a cashier, the manager, and me, the team leader. I was the only one in the back, and the cashier was the only one in the front, and the manager was in his office. And it was pretty slow. And whenever it got slow, the company couldn't provide, couldn't pay the hourly rate, so we had to clock out. But because it was still within our shift, we still had to remain there until our shift was over. And sometimes we would sit in the dining room for hours and not be clocked in and not getting paid. And this night was like one of those nights. Now, when you close the restaurant, you have to clean up afterwards. So the cleaning process can take up to 2 or 3 hours. So there are times that I didn't get off of work until like maybe 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And this night, it was slow. It was very slow. And we were clocked out, and we were sitting in a dining room, me and the cashier, and all of a sudden, a bus full of tourists who was staying at the hotel next to the Burger King came in, and there was about maybe 40 of them. So we immediately clocked in, and we started to prepare the food for them and make the orders. It was so much to do because we were just finishing cleaning up, and it's like maybe 10 o'clock at night, and we had just finished cleaning up, thinking that it was going to be slow for the rest of the night. So everything was put away. I had to take everything out and start, the cooking process for all the orders, and I was doing this by myself, and it became very overwhelming. And the cashier was overwhelmed because she's taking orders and making drinks and things like that, and it was just so strenuous on us because we were the only two working, while the manager, Sean, was standing there watching over us to make sure we were doing our jobs, but didn't participate in helping at all. So I'm not sure what kind of team leader he was, but he was our manager, so there was really nothing I can say or do because he had more power over us. And he noticed that I was going kind of slow, and he told me to speed it up. And I told him, I'm not a robot. I don't have the the capacity to do all these orders at once, so they have to wait. Don't tell me when a customer has to wait. Get these orders filled now. And I'm like, then help me. Help assist me. Wrap a burger up or something, Help me, And he refused to help me, and he said, no, I'm not going to help you. You do your job. Something to that nature. And then said something underneath his breath, but I heard the word faggot. That was surprising for me that I heard that from him as a manager, so I never, it didn't bother me because I've heard faggot and spick and, honky all my life, and pussy, and it just, all these names, it didn't bother me at first. So I continued to go, make the orders. Finally, all the people got their food. Maybe about an hour later, everybody was happy. And then we had to clean up their mess. And they had left the store, and the store closed. And we had to clean up everything all over again. So by this time, it was like maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was taking out the trash. And in the back of this Burger King was a long parking lot. It was very dark and deserted with trees, and it was kind of shady and very secluded and like dark. There were no lights. And you get out the Burger King through the back door, and you had to walk across the parking lot all the way to the end of the parking lot to get to the garbage can, dumpster, where there was also an oil dumpster. And I remember when I opened the door, 6 people were there. I thought they were part of the group, but one of them said, that's him. And I kept walking, but I felt a sense of like my security was in danger and I was going to be harmed. So I went and I dropped the garbage in the garbage can, and I rushed back inside. When I came inside, those 6 people were in the lobby. Now we're waiting for the manager to close, because when the manager closes, he locks the door and everything like that. Then we can go home. And now we're waiting for the manager, and I see those 6 people, and I got scared. And this is a time before cell phones, so I was really like, I couldn't call 911 or anything like that. And I mentioned to the cashier that something is going to happen to me. And she said, "Oh, you're being really paranoid. Don't worry about it." But I think she knew as well, because she heard things that I didn't hear, especially when I was outside dropping out the garbage, so this is very difficult. When the store closed, those 6 people followed my manager outside to lock the door. I was still inside, gathering my things and fixing things up to be prepared for the morning rush, and when I saw them all follow my manager outside while they waited for me, I was like, oh, hell no. My instincts were right. I come from the ghetto. I know when I'm being harmed or about to be harmed. And so my instincts told me to go out the back door, because I didn't want to go through the front door. Big mistake, because the front door, there were lights and cars and traffic. The back door, I thought perhaps maybe I can actually go out and then run a different direction or go in a different direction to avoid them. But it was a big mistake, because when I opened the back door, there they were. And they started to jump me, and they called me every name in the book, as they said, like spick, pussy, faggot, honky, while they're kicking me, cracker, it just kept going on and on and on, and they're kicking me and punching me and pummeling me to the ground and laughing as they're doing it. And I remember as I'm on the ground, I can see my manager standing there, ordering them to continue to hit me and beat me up and jump me. I was dumbfounded. I was like, how is this even remotely possible? So I quickly, there was an opportunity for me to get away. So I got away, and I ran next door, bleeding profusely, to the hotel. And by the time I got to the hotel and told my story, because they didn't want blood all over their lobby, and they didn't even want me in the building. But once I told my story, they called the police. And by the time the police came, everybody was gone. And so I told them what happened, and it was my manager and, his associates and stuff like that all jumped me. Because it was beyond their jurisdiction, because I lived in Far Rockaway, they couldn't do anything. So the only thing the police did was drive me to the border of Far Rockaway and Nassau County. And I had to walk home from there. So I thought maybe perhaps I can go to the police in Far Rockaway, seeing that it wasn't in their jurisdiction. But the police in Far Rockaway, at the 101 precinct where I was raised and lived, as I said in previous episodes, they told me that it wasn't in their jurisdiction either, and there was nothing they could do, or a complaint could be filed. But there was an assault charge. So my manager was eventually arrested, but he paid his bail. He was fired, and I'm told that he suffered a great deal of guilt, but he never once apologized to me. In fact, Burger King went on to fire me, and because I wanted to seek legal action, and they eventually fired me. And I was horrified, because I'm a victim, and here it is that you're abusing me by firing me and not listening to me. All my life, people have gotten away with murder, essentially, and gotten away with things and these horrific crimes against me, and I'm still here, and nothing has been done. And this burden of survivor's guilt is extremely painful, and it hurts because every time I tell these stories, I'm reliving the pain all over again. And but I'm sharing these stories because they shape me to the person I am today as a gay man. And these stories happened because I am a gay man. So I didn't have a job, and I even had the I was so desperate because of my situation at home. I called Burger King back again to try to get rehired, and that's when I found out that I was fired and no longer could work for the company. 15 years old. 15. So it took about maybe another year or so. So now I'm 16, and I started working at Burger King. McDonald's. McDonald's was close to the school, so we had our own McDonald's on the campus of the high school, Beach Channel High School. So it was easy for me to go to school and then walk to work, and as opposed to getting on a van and traveling to work. And so it was more convenient for me, and more convenient for me to get home. And I got hired, and what I found most interesting about this is what happened to me during school as well. When there was a break, or I went on vacation or something like that, because I worked in McDonald's for 2 years before joining the military. And what I realized is that whenever a manager would go on vacation, or another employee that I had started to associate with and get to know, just like in school, whenever I made friends or thought that they were my friends, whenever there was a summer break, we would come back and they acted like they didn't know me. Summer break is only 2 months. Like, how can you forget all about me in 2 months? And this happened repeatedly, so as I'm working there, it was the life, and people were bullying me and calling me faggot, and you know, I didn't let that bother me again because I heard it so much in my lifetime and experience it almost every day on a daily basis. So I ignored it like I was being told by the deans and the teachers and managers and stuff like that. So I kept ignoring it, and I tried to do my job. Again, I was more productive than everyone else. So they again gave me the title team leader. I can remember making 40 cheeseburgers in 90 seconds, and wrapping all this food. And there was this one manager, she was pregnant, and Melinda was her name, and we got to know each other, and I got to feel her baby kick, and then when she had her baby, she was gone for, I think, like 4 months, and when she came back, she acted like she didn't know me, and that really hurt me and disrespected me. So I confronted her about it. Do you know what she did? She made me make all of this food. All of this food. I had to make 20 Big Macs, 40 cheeseburgers, 20 quarter pounders, and 40 McChickens, and fries, and all this food. But when I finished making all the food, in fast time, because I had to wrap it and do everything myself, and it was put underneath the heater in the front, I went back to look to see, where all the customers were, where the dining room was full, and the dining room was practically empty, and the heater was stocked with all this food. Her punishment for me getting angry and confronting her about her pretending not to know me, she took it out on me by forcing me to do all this work for nothing. Now all that food had gone to waste because no one was in the dining room and no one was ordering. And I complained to the upper managers, and there was a shift between managers, and the turnover rate was ridiculous because you had people from the ghetto, from Beach Channel High School, relatively working there, and it was Most managers didn't want to be in that environment. Most employees didn't want to be in that environment because it was sometimes really obnoxious. And and so the turnover rate of managers kept coming and going and coming and going, and eventually she left, and I praised God. I was like, thank God I don't have to deal with this, micromanagement anymore. And a new manager came, and his name was Juan. And Juan was I'm gonna say he was in his early 30s, and he was married with 2 kids, and from Ecuador, and he had a medium to muscular build. Um, he had brown curly hair and brown eyes and big full lips, and he was my manager now. And so they were looking for an assistant manager. So at that time, I was taking the test to become an assistant manager, and doing all these things to show that I am capable of holding that position. Seeing that I've been at Burger King for a year and a half. But I think they didn't give it to me because I was going away into the army. But I thought I was going to get it without any doubt because of what happened. But I'm going to get into that now. There was one day I was in the freezer, and I went to get some like buns or something. I don't remember what I was actually getting. Maybe it was patties or something. I don't remember, but I remember being in the freezer. And Juan had come into the freezer with me, and he, as I'm reaching, searching and looking over, he turns me around from the shelves and unzipped my uniform and started sucking my dick. This is the first time since I was sexually abused that another man had actually been interested in me and did something to me. And it was maybe about 2-3 months after he had started. And it was different from when I was sexually abused because he was actually showing me affection. Juan was showing me affection, and he was kissing me and hugging me and grabbing me. Whereas my stepfather, he was forcing himself on me, and it was a big difference. Again, I'm still a kid. This is what I know. This is what happened. So I thought it was normal, that these grown men were attracted to me because of my sexual orientation. So I went along with it, and it went on for so long, and people started to talk, and they started to harass me even further and more and more and more. And every chance he got, Juan would, find a way to kiss me or hug me and grab me and fondle me and, sexually abuse me. And there are times when we closed and he told me to wait for him so he could drive me home. And we had sex in the dining room. We had sex in the freezer. We had sex in his office. One time even, we drove to the beach. Now, in Far Rockaway at that time, there's houses there now, but at that time, there was nothing but land. It was full of weeds and brushes and trees and darkness. There was no lights. And people would go there to do lewd activity, and suspicious activities, especially on the boardwalk, and people were actually scared to go to the boardwalk after dark, and it was basically avoided. And if you were there, you were doing something that you weren't supposed to be doing. So all along these miles of beach, you would see all these trees and brushes and random cars in the middle of the, bushes. And sometimes you would see people in the bushes, doing things inappropriately. And this one night, my manager, Juan, ends up taking me to the beach, and we park the car, and he pulls my seat back and pulls my pants down. He pulls his pants down, and we start having sex. And it wasn't painful because at this time I was already prepared for the penetration, because my stepfather had done it, and I was already bleeding, and it hurt then, but it didn't hurt when Juan was doing it because I was already experienced per se, and Juan was doing it with affection. So I remember us being in the car and the windows were all fogged up, and it was just really dark and quiet, and he's moaning and enjoying himself, and I'm just letting him do it because again, this is what I've learned to you know to be. This is what I thought my life as a gay man was supposed to be like, you know, because it happened for so many years and nobody did anything, and no one's doing anything now. To my surprise, there were lights in the back window, and he quickly gets off of me, pushes the chair up, and tells me to pull my pants up and fix myself up. He did the same thing in the car, the driver's side, and just as he's fixing his tie, a tap on the window on his side, and then there was also a tap on the window on my side, and I rolled down the window first before he did, and it was a police officer shining his flashlight in the car, looking around, asking us what we're doing there. He goes on and says that I'm his nephew, and he's showing me the stars because I'm learning about the stars and the planets in high school, and I'm doing a science project. So he's showing me the Big Dipper and, you know, all the other shit that, that happens in the stars, you know, like what is it? The three of them connected, Orions, something like that. I don't remember, but it was all fake and it was just an excuse. And I couldn't believe that these officers saw me and did nothing, because I didn't have time to button my pants or zip up my pants, so I barely covered it with my uniform shirt, and it was clear. If you looked, you can clearly see my pants were undone, and these officers just said, this is not a right place for you guys to be in, so I suggest that you leave, because a lot of bad things happen, and we don't want anything bad to happen to you, so it would be best if you guys just leave and do your project somewhere else. But they didn't arrest him or me or anything like that. They just let him go, and he drove me home. So he got away with it, but this time after he got away with it, while we were in the store, it actually got worse. So instead of going to the freezer now, he moved me to the drive-through area because, again, I was applying to become an assistant manager. So part of that training was to learn how to do the drive-through. And he put me in the drive-through where you do the orders, and then you would drive up to the next window and you would take your order and drive away. So I was the one taking the orders. But in this particular area, it was a little booth, and there was a register and a microphone and some supplies like ketchup and mustard and things like that, and napkins. So I was stuck in this little booth, and instead of going to the freezer because we would literally freeze, he would suck my dick there, and I would suck his dick there, and we would have sex on the counter, and all of this while the store is full of employees, and no one actually knew anything. And this went on until I was 18 years old, and right before I left for the military, and no one did anything. But during that time, employees started to notice that we were getting very close together. And then that's when the bullying and harassment started to increase on me. So to alleviate that stress on me, he started to tell employees at a meeting that we had that I was his uncle. So he became Uncle Juan. No one bothered me after that, and in fact, it made him want to be around me even more. So again, we would have sex like literally throughout the entire store, and this went on for so many years, and he was married. I never got to meet his wife or anything like that. I saw pictures of his kids, but I couldn't understand why this grown man was all over me as a kid, and he got away with it. Eventually, the turnover rate continued and the positions were changed. And I thought perhaps maybe by sleeping with him, I can actually get my manager's position, assistant manager's position. But unfortunately, it didn't work. So I became the play place ranger. The play place ranger was in charge of the play place. It was a new addition to the actual McDonald's restaurant where kids can go play. So there's a slide, there's a ball thing where they can play and jump in the balls, and all the kids had their birthday parties there, and I was in charge of hosting the birthday parties for the kids. And now, instead of the store, we were actually having sex in the play place, on the slide, in the balls, in the bathroom inside the play place, because it was enclosed, so no one could actually see. I'm not even sure if there were actually cameras, but it wouldn't surprise me that there were cameras, and he probably deleted whatever information there was on the cameras. But he eventually, right before I was to go to the military, maybe about 2 months before I was to leave, he left. And when he left, I never saw him again or heard from him again or ever spoke to him again. And that was what I experienced before I went to the Army. Again, these are true stories. These are stories and confessions that actually happened to me. This is my story. I'm going to go into details, and I'm going through stages of life so you can see how my life as a gay man was one of the worst things that has happened to me. Sometimes people feel inebriated and free once they come out the closet. I never officially had a chance to come out. I was always secluded and isolated and abused and neglected, and all this for being gay and who I am as a person. And every time I lifted my voice up, I was constantly being ignored. And the negative parts of what was happening to me seemed to happen so often that they became normal. As I said, this happened on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, I could be walking on the street going home and get jumped. Or in school, I remember drinking water from a water fountain once, and it was marble. And as I'm drinking the water, some kid pushed me and pushed my head into the marble water fountain. I remember bleeding, and the dean had to take me home, and again, my mother did nothing. But these kinds of behavior from society were so normal to me that eventually it stopped bothering me, and I stopped, trying to do the right thing and live my life. So I tried to avoid everything and everyone. And seeing that everyone was calling me a pussy and faggot and weak, and I wasn't a man, I thought the only way I can prove them wrong was to join the military. Moreover, I joined the military because I wanted to get out of the environment of my home and the dysfunction there, so I wanted to join and get the motivation and structure and discipline that I needed as a grown man to be taught to me, because my mother wasn't doing it. And yeah, these are actual life stories, and these are stories that happened to me. And as the series continues, my life will continue up until here I am today. So we now go on into me joining the military, which was even worse than my actual home environment, at least basic training. because as I left basic training and went on to AIT and then got deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq. Do you realize the very same war that I fought in is now over? Is now over. That gives you a perspective of how long this war has lasted and how long this abuse in my lifetime has lasted. It kept going on and on and on and on, and there was essentially nothing I can do because I felt it was normal. I look back now at it and it wasn't normal. And when I was in foster care as a child, ACS knew, the police knew, everybody knew of this abuse, but no one did a damn thing. No one was arrested. No one was held accountable for the crimes that they committed on me. No one was listening. It was as if I was talking to a brick wall, or a brick wall was in my face and I couldn't get past it to get the justice I deserved, as a victim. And there's I don't know if you see on TV now, but there's anyone who's been sexually abused as a child has now a right to file a legal lawsuit against a clergy or a teacher or anyone in the Catholic church vicinity to sue. And what I find most disturbing about that is that, yeah, foster care is included, the church is included, teachers are included, police are included, all these agencies are included in this lawsuit for you to file a sexual abuse claim. But none of them are from a former employee or from a family member. So I have no obligation or no right to actually file a claim for sexual abuse. Now that's very disturbing because here it is that I'm a victim and I'm telling my story, and yet I still can't file any type of litigation against the people that hurt me. And I'm trying to seek justice and get past this. Part of the grieving process and what gets people depressed and the mental health of it all is that you don't have closure. I think when you have closure on something, that's when you're able to actually get past it, learn from it, and grow from it, and move on. And I've never had closure on anything. As I'm telling these stories, I'm beginning to realize that, yeah, no one listened to me, and there is no closure, so that burden is still there. And it just makes me more and more depressed. And sometimes people seek out alcoholism or drug use, or they commit suicide. I don't do all those things because I see what drug and alcohol can do to people. So I'm not that type of person. But I did try to commit suicide. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But it didn't work. But it didn't work for a reason. And that's the reason why I'm doing this video biography. So please stay tuned for the next episode of Gaytopix Confessions. I'm your host, Kenny Cruz. Again, these are real life events. These events are true stories. They are not fabricated tales. These actually happened to me. So perhaps now that they're being told, something will be done. And I hope I can finally get the justice I deserve. And the community will finally accept me. Now, that bothers me as well because in the LGBTQ community, because we have all suffered so much by being gay, I thought it would be more accepting. They would be more accepting of me and my friendship, but it was more or less one-night stands and things like that, and no one really wanted to get to know me. And everyone that I encountered, I only saw one time, and I never saw them again. And that's really striking because I was very sexy. And if I was good enough to sleep with, why am I not good enough to be your friend? You know? But here I am going on another tangent. We'll get into that later. But again, these stories are true and factual. They actually happened to me. And I'm sharing these stories because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. So please stay tuned for the next episode, if there is a next episode, of Gaytopix Confessions. I'm your host, Kenny Cruz. Remember, you're always in the mix with Gaytopix. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share to my channel. All rights are reserved. But I'm willing to do a movie or a docuseries because I think this would definitely be, a huge hit. I tried to write a book and I produced the book, and it was never actually printed, and because of COVID, and there were so many issues with that, and the book was delayed, and now here's my chance to actually visually tell you, personally tell you what happened to me. So please stay tuned for the next episode of Gaytopix Confessions. Kenny Cruz out.